You ready?
I think so, yeah.
Let's shoot this piece of shit.
It's a ninja legend. When a long sword is on top of a short sword and covered with a red cloth, it means a challenge. No one can turn down the challenge. You gonna accept the challenge? You are a ninja, aren't you?
Hello, I'm Sabrina, aka Bria, aka the artist of the popular transgender-themed webcomic Life of Bria, and now apparently that qualifies me to have a radio show. This is episode 7 of my show, and since when this show airs, I will actually be recovering from surgery in a hospital in Montreal, this episode and the next few after it are going to be pre-recorded rather than going out live. So I guess instead of live with Bria, you could call this lying with Bria. I'm not going to push that joke too far. This week, I'm really happy that I get to have one of my favorite people on the show, a fellow cartoonist and lover of classical animation, the artistic genius behind the trans-themed webcomic Manic Pixie Nightmare Girls, the lovely and intelligent Jessica Nightmare. Jessica, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you so much for having me. This is pretty neat.
Right? I'm so glad we've managed to connect here. I'm really a huge fan of your comic. It's like, as far as I can tell, it seems like pretty popular. I'd consider you like one of the major players in the trans comic scene. And I'm sure your many fans out there are just dying to know, what's your favorite dinosaur?
Oh, well, that's easy. I'm gonna try to get the scientific name correct here, but I think it's the term is long necks or brontosaurus.
Yes, I'm pretty sure that's what the paleontologists usually call that one, and not a different thing at all. Why is that, though? What would be your reason for that one?
It's like Brachiosaurus, and then there's like a couple other species of similar dinosaurs. I just like the ones with the long necks that go up into the trees, and I just feel like they just want to eat leaves and be left alone.
Right?
And I feel like I kind of relate to that a little bit.
Well, I always ask my guests what their favorite dinosaur is because I think it gives us a lot of insight into who they are and what they value in life and who they want to be. And it's kind of interesting, I guess, this answer of yours is so like low key and mellow and friendly because despite the fact that Manic Pixie Nightmare Girls has developed quite a following, you've said to me before that you don't actually like being popular. Why is that?
Oh, well, honestly, I personally just don't have the emotional capacity to kind of be in the spotlight very much. It's kind of difficult for me, especially like say if like people are upset with me or right wing trolls or even like when other leftists are like upset with me. It's really hard for me to deal because I just have I don't have very many emotional spoons and. So, like, as much as I love the recognition that I've gotten from other trans women, sometimes, like, it's a little hard having a lot of eyeballs on you.
Oh, yeah, I feel it. I actually just put out a comic today that kind of is mostly talking about, like, non-binary stuff. I don't fully get the non-binary thing because it's like we're kind of different people with different, senses of who we are, and that's fine. I have this crazy notion that you should have empathy with and solidarity with people even if you don't fully understand them. But there's a huge amount of hate, record amount of hate I've ever gotten for a comic is on this comic. People are awful about it, and it's stressful just to look at like the little notifications of comments, anything, any notification I get about my comics page. It's like, oh good, someone else is being awful now. I have to go babysit some people now. Is that like a big part of it, just like managing that whole mess that comes with this job we've for some reason decided to do?
Well, that's the thing. Like, I honestly, I just like wish that I didn't even have like a comment section on my Facebook pages or anything, because like I really, like it's hard to like moderate that kind of thing, and you don't want like because like people come in and like they'll just like post offensive stuff on your page, and like it it can be really upsetting to your fans. And then sometimes you screw up and like say something that you really you think something about it, but then like then you find out that it's like, oh wow, I had no idea what I was talking about, and I was wrong on that. But yeah, just the whole like conflict is really it's been tough for me lately, especially like over the past 6 months. I've been kind of struggling with depression and other mental health issues. Like when I'm feeling good, I could like take all of it on. I don't mind having eyeballs on me. I don't mind like going into the comments section and cleaning up stuff. But yeah, it's difficult sometimes though.
And it's also hard coming from the other end. You mentioned sort of more liberal people. There's not a whole lot of wiggle room. If you mess up on your social justice or your politics a little bit, you're now ostracized, and it's very unforgiving in this day and age. It's tough, and any comment, no matter who it's from, is potentially like jarring. It's I'm not a fan.
Yeah, like I try to be patient with like I've changed a lot. Like 5 years ago, like I used to be the kind of trans woman that like just would be upset with other trans women if they weren't like using the most correct up to date language with things, and like I used to go to this support group, and there's like just older trans women who grew up in a different time, and I remember just like feeling like this anger towards them because like they would use like words like transvestite and stuff like that. But I feel like I've chilled out on that kind of thing, a lot. It's like, I like, I don't know if it's like my place to like tell like, 50-year-old trans women who, been around forever, like what words they should and shouldn't use, like I don't know. I've kind of grown out of that a little bit, like I'm all about encouraging people to like, hey, maybe, the young folks have a better idea, on, like how we should word things, and, like they have, better theory and discourse, but then at the same time, I'm just like, like, if like an old trans woman wants to call herself a transvestite, I don't care, like,
it's a little bit like when grandma says something racist, you're like, oh grandma, I can't change who you are, but don't do that. you can't
kind
of being a bit of a dinosaur.
Oh gosh, my grandmother was she grew up in World War II, and she would not have nice things to say about Japanese people, and it's like, grandma, like, what is your problem? Are you still hung up on this? Get over it.
I think the main thing is to learn, and if you can, help out and point out why maybe that's not the most helpful way to speak. But yeah, compassion, that's such a key thing that most people don't seem to learn in any life, let alone this life that we lead. It kind of forces us to learn it. So actually, going back to your comic, I've been wondering, Manic Pixie Nightmare Girls is a pretty unusual name. Where did it come from?
Oh, well, it's like, like the first thing, like people think it's, like kind of a play on the, Manic Pixie Dream Girl, which that's part of it too.
Yeah.
But also, like, because I do suffer with manic depression, I thought that would be nice to have the manic in there. And then, so, Manic Pixie Dream Girl, but I feel like trans women are, most people's worst nightmare.
I remember that like, one comic about like, in particular.
Like I just like have had so many scenarios where, like, someone might be like friendly towards me, like whether it's like a romantic thing or just a friend thing, and then, like, a few minutes in they realize I'm transgender, and then, it's like, this like 180 turn, and it's just like you tell like, interacting with someone like me might be a nightmare for them. So, like, it's kind of funny, like, if I didn't start this as a comic strip, I kind of wanted to have, like, a, kind of like a pop punk feminist girl band called, Manic Pixie Nightmare Girls. But, the comic came instead, so.
Well, I think everyone's quite happy for that, certainly, although a band would be also pretty great. I'm curious then, what led you to start drawing a comic as opposed to, say, starting a band or something?
Well, like, when I actually started doing Manic Pixie Nightmare Girls on a regular basis, I was honestly like at a very, very low point in my life. I just got fired from the second job in a row. Totally not trans misogyny related, of course. Even though it was.
Yeah. They always have another reason,
and like,
right?
yeah, but besides that, I got fired from a second job, even though I was like doing a pretty darn good job. Mm-hmm. And then like also like I was like losing old friends who like was just sick of me like talking about social justice stuff all the time, and like like I had family members rejecting me, and it was just like at this time where like I had like you know all my old friends abandoned me, a bunch of family abandoned me, no job anymore. I just like I felt like I was kind of at the bottom of a barrel, and I always considered myself a cartoonist, but just never really did anything with it because self-esteem issues and lack of ideas and lack of confidence with my drawing style. Like I would always tell myself, it's like, okay, I'll start doing a comic strip once I'm good enough at drawing, then I'll finally do it, and it's just like I'm getting older and older and like nothing's happening, and I just like decided that like, okay, I have to do this now or else I might completely miss my opportunity to do this thing that I've always loved. And and it's like funny because like once I started doing it, then like I started getting better at drawing, and I still am getting better at drawing. I still feel like I'm learning like how to make things look nice, and that kind of aspect is important to me too. Like I don't want to just like share my stories about like my personal experience and thoughts about being transgender, but also I want to make like a really good cartoon.
And you are really good. I mean, I'm really impressed. I just assumed that you had gone to school for art, but you were all self-taught, right?
Like, oh yeah, no. School. Oh gosh, I was the worst in school. Like grade school and high school, like I had no interest in it. I literally did no homework. And because I grew up in an addicted family, my dad was addicted to heroin and my mother was an alcoholic. And so they didn't care that I wasn't doing good in school. Like, in fact, I don't even know why any teachers ever passed me because, like, I literally did not do any homework. I just didn't care. It's just like, I'd rather watch cartoons and like
it's
play
hard
video
to care
games.
About school, though. I didn't give a shit about school. Are we getting some feedback?
Yeah.
No,
well, I actually just had a hard time hearing you. I couldn't hear you very well.
I was just saying I didn't give a shit in school either. I just, if I didn't get it done during the school day, it wasn't getting done, because after school, that's my time. That's when I'm doing shit. And it's hard to give a crap about school when you're dealing with other problems, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I same thing. I didn't do any homework. And then, when I turned 18 also, I was going to go to community college, and my grandmother, she was ready to help pay for it. Mm-hmm. And then, I was going to take art classes, and I was really excited. But then, bam, I got struck with acute renal failure.
I was going to ask about that, yeah.
Yeah, I had to have a kidney transplant in my late teens when I was 19 years old, ready to go to college. And so, like, I had to drop out of college like my first week, which the college used that against me. Like later when I tried to go back, they wouldn't let me take more than one class because they said I dropped out of all, and it was so annoying. But yeah, like I pretty much missed out on schooling, with the exception of like I would take like a figure drawing class here or there, but it wasn't really a class. It was just like you drawing a nude model and not really getting any feedback. It was
just what, that's how you learn. I went to art school. You don't get taught anything in art school, especially a university program. The best thing to do is to draw, and that's why you mentioned you've gotten better drawing your cartoon. That's because that's how you get better at drawing cartoons, is you draw cartoons.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's like my advice for like aspiring cartoonists is like, just do it. It doesn't even matter if it sucks.
Yeah.
Just like do it and finish it. It's not, and like,
it's never
and like,
good enough to
don't worry about the drawing or if your content isn't great or if like, because like if as long as you're doing it and finishing it, that's like the main goal. Like for me, I feel like it's a miracle that like, like I'm able to finish any comics, let alone have like, now I have a pretty decent sized library of, comic strips, and some of them, I look back on, I'm like, hey, this isn't that bad. Other ones I kind of cringe at looking at, like, they're riddled with like spelling and grammar errors because, like I didn't pay attention in school. Like I just, like I'm not good with spelling or grammar or anything like.
But you know what I found is that usually it's the comics that you don't like. For some reason, everybody likes them, and you can't see it. Have you ever had that?
Oh my gosh, that happens like all the time too. Like it's funny. Like some of my very favorite comics, like I'll post them like, oh, this is so funny, this is clever. I'm like giggling as I'm drawing it. I'm actually in a good mood.
Yes.
And I put it out there, and it's like, it's like, oh, come on, this is great.
Yes, I had that very recently. It's very sad. Like, no, come on, this is the funniest thing I've ever said. And no one agrees. You there? I was worried you cut out.
I don't only want to talk about transgender issues in my comics.
That's something I wanted to ask about. So many of us, I've talked with other artists and in all different mediums, and they all feel the same way. We wish we could do something that's not trans-related a lot of the time. But why do you think it is? Like, 'cause it's quite clear that there's a voracious audience for trans-positive media. Why do you think it's like that's what people are so hungry for, and that's why there's demand for the comics we make?
Oh yeah, well, because you look at mainstream stuff, and anything that touches on transgender issues whatsoever gets it like at least a little bit wrong.
Mm-hmm.
There's just like anything, even like underground stuff, I get it wrong sometimes. I feel like, but it's a little more authentic when it comes from an actual trans person. I feel like that's what people are craving, like, like an authentic story from a trans person, that other, trans people can relate to. Like with my comics, it's mostly trans women, like I have some, trans men friends that like it and stuff like that. And, non-binary people. I actually kind of identify as non-binary myself.
Interesting.
But, it's like something I don't really talk about too much, and I don't really want to talk about it.
Yeah. It's, Moses Nation, like, maybe it's not anybody's business either. Like, I don't know. I don't put it out there. Outside of my work, I don't talk about trans stuff. I guess you could say I live mostly stealth, which I have mixed feelings on. But, like, it's not anyone's fucking business. Like I consider this like a medical thing I've gone through. It's a thing I'm proud of having gone through, but like I don't have to tell everybody. I don't owe them an explanation of who I am. Why should you have to talk to people if you don't want to about things? I don't know.
Yeah, absolutely. And like honestly, like the comic was born out of just being so frustrated with like, like people in my life simply not getting it and just being cruel about it too, which I know a lot of other trans people experience. Like I would say the same exact things that I was saying in my comics before I did the comics, and like, like I said, like my family would be mad at me, and like my old friends, started to leave me and stuff like that, and and like for a while I was beginning to think it's me. I'm like, oh my. Who is just like not giving people a decent enough chance. Like I really thought it was me, and then I started making, the comics, and and just like seeing that like other people out there relate to them is just so, it like feel like
no.
My old friends who were the jerks. Maybe it was me, so. The response has been really nice. But like then at the same time, like I'm at this point now where I feel like I've said everything that I can about being trans. Like I feel like there's so many other people out there that have better things to say. Just like like I feel like pretty much everything that I had to say, I've already said, and pretty much going forward, I'll probably just be repeating a lot of the same things that I've been saying before.
Your comics were the longer running trans comics. How long have you been doing it for?
Oh, that's funny. It's only been like 3 years, not even.
See, I guess there's just that few trans comics. Because, like, you know, I only just started up in the past year or so. I think Sophie's only been doing hers for a couple years. And so, like, you seem to me like, whoa, the veteran there. 3 years.
Well, there's
Like,
also remember Venus Envy.
oh, I've heard of that, yeah.
But yeah, I guess that's not going so much anymore. But yeah, I guess like at the time, I remember like putting out my early comics, and I was just like people just saying, "There's like no one else saying this stuff. Thank you so much for
Yeah.
saying this." And like honestly, like when it comes to like the trans content, I think my earlier stuff is like much more on point than stuff that I'm saying today.
Well, it seems like you're having fun more today. When you make a comic, lots of times it's just you having fun, which is great. That's why I like it.
Yeah, like honestly, like I said, I'm just like at this point, I'm just trying to get good at being a cartoonist, so I could like, you know, say interesting things later. Like right now, like I said, like dealing with depression, stuff like that. I've been in like this big lull. Like about a month ago, I put out like a few comics that I felt like were really great, and then but then the depression hit even harder. And like honestly, like yesterday was the first day that I woke up in a long time and like didn't feel like complete crap.
I want to say that's really great, but because you felt really great, not because it was the feeling crap before. How would you say overall then that like the depression and other things you've had to deal with have affected your adult life or your work too?
Like yeah, when it comes to it's hard. Some people could work when they're depressed. I just I feel like just like moving from the bed to my work area is like walking through a thick swamp. It's just so difficult. And then put like just to try to draw anything can be so hard when you're feeling depressed. And yeah, but like it's really funny too because like sometimes like with my comics too, like I'll a lot of people say my comics are sad. I'll post a comic and I'll get like all this great, supportive feedback. People are like, "Oh, are you okay? I'm worried about you right now." And I'm like, "Oh yeah, this is actually, and I'm okay now. The reason why I'm able to like draw it is because like I'm actually not in that spot anymore. Like gosh, like the comic strip Return of the Gender Dysphoria Bug. Yes. Like after I posted that one, just so many people, my inbox just filled up with all these great supportive comments, just like asking if I was okay and if I needed anything and internet hugs and all that kind of stuff. And I was like, oh yeah, I'm fine. I'm actually doing great right now.
That's why this
the way that I feel
exists.
Was like months ago.
Yeah. That's interesting though, because like I find like every single one of my emotional comics that I've done, I did it while I was emotional because that was what allowed me to get over the emotions. Strangely, it's that's actually kind of why I started doing what I did at all, is working through all the emotions I was feeling early transition. It's so interesting our processes end up being so different. Like I totally get why yours would be like that because it sucks to work when you're sad.
Yeah, it's difficult sometimes, but I'm feeling good. I'm like, yay, a good day. It's kind of sad. And the thing is too, it's like all my depression, anxiety. I also have bipolar 2 and all this, and PTSD from the abusive and neglected childhood. But it's all going untreated right now. Like I'm not seeing a therapist. I'm not on any medication. So like. Which is like hard, like, I keep telling myself, oh yeah, I'm going to go and get treatment for this stuff. And then, and then I'll like start feeling better again. And it's like, and then the depression hits again. And I'm like, oh, maybe I should go get treatment. And then like, and then I get hypomanic again. I'm like, oh, I'm fine. I don't need anything. So it's like this kind of, cycle of, happy and sad.
It sounds awfully similar to the process we often go trying to decide whether or not to transition, though. You think you gotta do it, then suddenly you have a good day and you're like, oh, no, wait, I don't have to do that bullshit anymore. But maybe the thing to do is to bite the bullet and go for that thing, and you'll be pleasantly surprised at how much better you feel. I'm like, what the fuck do I know? But it's just interesting the parallels there, almost as though everything follows the same pattern in life.
It's funny, like, I feel like it's like a little different than other people's, because like the very moment that I like realized it was possible, it was like no question for it, like 100%. Just dove right in, and like I was like, honestly, I was like naive, and like being naive about the situation really helped the transition, because like because like back then I was just like this clueless liberal. Like I didn't know too much about radical politics or anything, and like so like I just like figured that like it's like the fact that I felt like it was possible for me meant that like everybody was going to be fine with it. Like I didn't really, and it was like kind of like in the mid, it's like I decided to transition for sure in like 2008, right? And so like I felt like it's like a little bit before, like, we started seeing lots of, trans women in the media, and like a lot of, trans activism on the internet. And, yeah, but just so much, I, I guess ignorance about like the way the world was going to treat me. Like, I just figured everyone would be fine with it, and like everyone would be like happy for me. But, of course, that wasn't the case.
But that's one of those things that shows us why it's important that we do what we do, because there's still a lot of work to do. People are not cool with it, apparently, for some reason. And yeah, it's that fear is what keeps a lot of people from doing it. They're afraid, and I guess it's good that you weren't afraid, because you shouldn't be afraid. I don't know. I think that's great that you just
like
you there?
Oh, jeez. I keep not being able to hear you.
Oh, jeez.
It keeps cutting off.
Yeah,
but
this isn't my preferred platform to interview on, but we take what we can get. Don't worry, we're doing great. I was saying that I think that fear that a lot of people have based on that awful treatment that we still get is what keeps people in the closet and from doing it. And it's great that you didn't have that fear. But the work that, cartoonists like us do, and all sorts of all the other people working on this, that's helping reduce the fear and just showing kids that there's a community. Like, if present me could go back in time and visit past me and tell that scared little kid that it was okay, that would just change my entire goddamn life. And
absolutely. Like at the beginning of my transition, I had fantasies of going back to my younger self all the time.
Yeah.
And just like
give him a hug even.
Yeah, tell her that's gonna be okay and all this kind of stuff. But yeah, yeah, now that I'm thinking about it, but like kind of being naive about the whole situation kind of played in my favor,
yeah.
Because like, yeah, I didn't have that fear, and like not only that, like coming out of the kidney transplant at the age of 19, like that was my, because like I was already thinking about it like back then, and that was like in the year 2000, like I was, like I had this, transition on my mind, and but like I figured, like, because after the kidney transplant, I'm like, well, that's it. My life is over. I can't do anything I really love anymore. Like my life has to revolve around my kidney transplant now.
Does it affect your life today, though?
Yeah. I'm sorry.
Does it affect your life today, though?
Oh yeah, it's I'm on. I have to be on medication for the rest of my life, like hardcore medication too. That's gonna decrease my lifespan and everything.
Oh. Well, it would have decreased a whole lot more to have it, though, or to not.
Yeah,
have it,
no,
right?
absolutely.
So, I had a Karate student before who had a kidney transplant, and he had the original kidney still in his body, so we had to be really careful. Like, you couldn't hit him in the body too much. Do you still have the third kidney there? Do they leave it in, or?
Well, yeah, the kidneys I was born with, they were just damaged. They were only working at 4%, and you need like 8% of it to live. But the kidneys weren't doing any damage to me. They just weren't working, so they don't really remove your old kidneys. They just put the new one in the front.
They don't take stuff out if they don't have
to. Yeah, no, absolutely. So, but yeah, like, like I really thought like like, honestly, the kidney transplant did mess up my life a lot. Like, I didn't transition as early as I wanted to. I couldn't really, like, because, like, this is around the time I'm, like, 19 years old. And, like, part of me, like, wanted to just, like, leave, like, my parents' house and just, like, couch surf and, just, go and be free,
Yeah.
And then, so then I got this kidney transplant, and now I need healthcare. And so, like, I just got a job at Starbucks. I'm uneducated. So, like, yeah, I basically worked at Starbucks for, like, a decade just for insurance.
Yeah, but that's so normal. Even up
Oh,
here
yeah,
in
it was bad.
communist
Starbucks
Canada.
is bad. And you should feel bad if you buy stuff from Starbucks. They are just the worst. Oh,
Ooh.
I guess, like, maybe I'm a little jaded from working there for, like, 10 years, but yeesh, I can't even bring myself to walk into one of those places anymore.
And you live in the hometown of Starbucks. Like, you live in
Oh, I
Seattle
know.
right
You
now.
know, the thing is, too, when I moved from Chicago to Seattle, like, I just, like, oh, man, that's another thing I was naive about. I'm a very naive person when it comes to a lot of things. Like, I just had this idea that was, like, this super, radically progressive place, and, like, it was just going to be, like, really nice, and everyone's going to be nice and accepting, and the queer community is just so great out here, and everyone's going to be good to me and not betray me or anything. And, like, I moved here with my partner, and, like, 3 roommates in a row took advantage of us. Like, yeah, just, like, just ended up, like, not paying for bills or rent, and just, like, crashed here for 4 weeks. And then when it came to time to pay the rent, all of a sudden they were gone.
Yeah.
And that happened, like, 3 times in a row. And then, like, yeah, and yeah, just, like, disillusionment after disillusionment, like, moving out to Seattle. Like, I honestly never considered myself a proud Midwesterner, until I moved to the West Coast.
To me, though, you seem like such a West Coast person. Just the way, I don't know, the things you talk about and your interests and the way you present yourself. It's like, oh yeah, she was born in Seattle, right? And it was sort of like really surprising to find out you just weren't from the West Coast. Because
Yeah,
I am from the West Coast.
I my mom grew up in California, and then she visited Chicago, where she met my dad, and then, like, decided just to stay. So, like, complete fluke that I even exist. Like, my mom visits Chicago, meets my dad, and then, like, and then they got pregnant with me. So
that's a little sweet. Actually, speaking of your dad, I remember reading a comic where you mentioned he's a cat burglar. I can't not ask about that.
Yeah, it's funny. I did not find that out until after he passed away.
Oh my goodness.
It was, and not only that, not only after he passed away, but it was years after he passed away. Because I guess it was, like, this family embarrassment. But I, like, and at first too, I was, like, kind of like, like, because I was taken aback a little bit, because, like, like, looking at my father through these rose-colored glasses, like, kind of, like, thinking of him as, like, this seedy criminal. But now, like, like, but over the past, like, 5 years or so, I actually kind of, like, I think it's kind of cool, actually. Like, he'd steal from warehouses and from rich people's houses, but it was, he'd help pay the rent and bills with it, but then he'd also, like, buy drugs with it.
Well,
so
that usually happens along with crime.
Yeah, and it's, but then, like, it's, like, funny because, like, like, I look at my life and my views on the world and stuff like that, and it's like, oh yeah, my father was a burglar. That makes total sense. And he was also, like, this is, like, Chicago, and he was, like, union guy, and like, kind of, like, fight the power kind of, person, and just, like, he always warned me against authority and stuff like that. So, like, and he's like my dad. And even though, like, like, he struggled with heroin, and, like, because of that, like, there was neglect there, and, childhood trauma. But, like, out of my parents, he was the one in my childhood that actually, like, I felt like this was the nurturing parent, while my mother was, like, kind of boozing and narcissistic and, not very nice.
Is your mom gonna be listening to the show?
Nah, I'm not gonna tell her about it.
She appears in your comics quite a bit, so you seem not to mind talking about her. But she's also the one who apparently, didn't she donate the kidney that you got?
Yeah,
That's got to have a mixed relationship there from that.
Yeah, it's kind of it's a thing, like, because a lot of like talk about like abuse, from parents and stuff. Like it's kind of a lot of black and white stuff. It's like I have friends that are like, oh, just cut her off, cut her off. Like after like being mistreated by her over and over again. And like even like after the kidney transplant, during the whole kidney thing, oh gosh, there was just like abusive, stuff going on. It's just like part of who she is. But like she also gave me a kidney, and like yeah, it's a lot more complicated than just being able to cut off, your parent, especially when they give you a kidney, even if they are abusive, so it's like, yeah, it's,
I think it's so easy to say these things like, oh yeah, I'd do that for sure. It's like, yeah, let's see you cut your mom out of your life, or let's see you do some really emotionally difficult thing. Like there's a reason why people say stay in abusive relationships or just stay in difficult situations, because there's usually people do things for a reason. People don't do things for no reason.
Yeah, so, yeah, it was the same thing too, because like I was in an abusive relationship too, and like people like criticized me for not getting out sooner, and then like of course this is back before like I was like kind of aware of feminism and stuff like that, and so like like I kind of like at the time I was all like feeling bad about myself. Yeah, maybe I should have left earlier. Maybe this is all my fault. And then like later, looking back, it's like, oh no, like, there are reasons why people stay around abusive people,
Oh yeah.
It's not so simple, and, you have to give, victims the benefit of the doubt.
So, speaking of victims and abuse and depression, you're working on a children's book right now. How's that going? How'd you get in that? That sounds like such a great thing to be doing.
Yeah, like I'm really excited for it, even though like it's been slow. I was expecting to have it all finished by September, but it's like the end of October, and it's not even, we're like I'm almost done with it. I have a bunch of thumbnails done. I just have to like finish the actual, drawings. But yeah, it was written by a 7-year-old trans girl named, her name is Avery Sparkles. You could look her up on Facebook. She has a Facebook page, and her mother is this like really great, trans parent activist who's just like really sweet, and like is really out there trying to like fight for trans kids, which is totally awesome and is needed. But yeah, it's funny, like working on this book has like brought up some like deep stuff for myself. It's like like you don't think about the things that are like lingering in the back of your brain and consciousness, but like I'm drawing this story about like a trans child, and it's just like part of me is like I had to struggle with envy a little bit. It's like, why couldn't I or my friends have this as a kid? Instead we were like tortured over our gender, like
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, and like I feel like that might have contributed to a little bit of depression, even though it's like yeah, the bigger stuff going on too. But yeah, like
it's a mixture of
so
feelings.
It's been
like
it's like this mix of feelings.
So many of us will have simultaneously like this like wonderful thing, like, oh wow, it's so weird this new generation of kids gets to just be treated like fucking human beings and be who they want to be and not go through this whole process we have to deal with to the same extent. I think it's still difficult for them in its own way, but they're kind of like, crap, they get to be who they want to be and I didn't. Fuck that. I hate the world. Everything sucks. Like I don't know. Honestly, I get depressed sometimes with this stuff, but I tend to get pissed off more. And there's times where it's just like, yeah, fuck the world. Why can't I have been born 20 years later or whatever and be one of these kids whose parents were awesome? Even though my parents have been pretty awesome. But, like, it's just, there's always going to be that there, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. I just, I feel like that's something a lot of, other trans women that I know like struggle with to some extent, and like, and which like brings me to the top, like, because we're talking about envy. I feel like the the feeling of envy has been like really villainized by our society. Like, like in any media, any character that like, struggling with envy is like portrayed as a villain or pathetic,
usually a woman
in some
too.
way. And it's, but it's a feeling that everybody has sometimes, that's, because I feel like envy, is like, you know, your brain trying to tell you that like, hey, there's something going on that you need to fix in your life. Like if you're, like before the comics, I felt envy towards like, other comic artists that I admired sometimes, and it's just like, oh yeah, it's because they're doing the thing that I want to do, and maybe I should do that. And then once I started doing it, I don't feel, much envy in that department anymore.
Yeah.
And the same thing, like, before I transitioned, I like envied women, and like after I like came to terms with being trans, like a light switch, that envy just disappeared.
Absolutely.
And like, like envy can cause people to do bad things.
For sure.
Resentful and like, mean. But, I really would like to see, better discussions around envy that doesn't frame the emotion as like inherently bad.
Well, it's even like anger. Anger is often portrayed as being inherently bad, but like it's often a response to a situation or your own internal state in regards to a situation. And so like it's a tool you can use. Your anger can direct you to something that needs to be done. Envy can direct you to something that needs to be done as well. It just means you can't let the emotion control you, or I don't know, some crap like that.
Yeah, I think the key is, it's like anger is good. Like a lot of my best comics were fueled by anger, just pure anger. Especially the ones where I'm like making fun of, here in Washington, there is this right wing religious group trying to like repeal this decade-old transgender protection law. Just like, oh, trans people are in the media now. Let's repeal this law that's been working for 10 years.
Yeah,
ridiculous.
No problems.
Oh gosh, what were we talking about? Oh my gosh, I kind of just spaced for a second.
Let's move on to cartoons. I know you love old-timey animation. Where did that start? How has it affected you today?
Oh gosh, cartoons. Yeah, I could talk about cartoons forever. I love cartoons. Oh gosh, well, growing up, I watched like old Disney cartoons, obviously, like Mickey Mouse and Donald Duck and Pinocchio and Bambi and Snow White. Which those are all those old Disney cartoons are just some of the most beautifully animated things of all time. I feel like because like they're so. Everyone who's alive today, like all those animated films and short films, have been around their whole life. So it's like, I feel like, we kind of take them for granted in some aspects, or like the old Warner Brothers cartoons, just so beautifully animated and drawn. It's like, as a cartoonist, I like look at this stuff and I'm like, how in the world did they do this? This is incredible. The most talented, hardworking cartoonists in all of history, like working in the golden age of animation. And, yeah, it's it's just like, for me, I can just like turn on like like old Warner Brothers cartoons and just have it on silent with music on and just like look at it because it's just so fun to look at for me. I don't even need the story. It's just like, but then again, like I guess that's my thing as a cartoonist. Like I don't expect like someone who doesn't really care much about cartoons to like just like stare at Pinocchio in awe, like of how the drawings came together and how it all moves and stuff like that.
Well, again, a lot of it, people take it for granted. They're just like, yeah, it moves, whatever, it's a puppet. It's like, yeah, it's a bunch of goddamn paper they drew out and made you believe there's a puppet there. That's amazing. Don't you dare to sell that short.
Yeah, and I love modern cartoons a lot today too, but they're definitely not drawn or animated as well as they were.
Well, the whole Flash thing, the digital. I feel like digital animation has made it so more people can animate and it's easier to put things out on a budget. The animation's not quite there though. Like it's a little more wooden, a little more stiff. Like if you've seen Simpsons, we always compare the Simpsons intro original to the modern one. It's just like a robot versus beautiful, interesting, emotion-filled real people.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Like that's funny. The Simpsons too. That was like kind of probably my number one influence. Like growing up, like The Simpsons is probably the reason why I wanted to be a cartoonist. I
know it's
growing up, I've watched every single episode, and even still to this day, I still watch it. And I know, like, as like a lot of trans women are probably cringing right now because they've done cruel trans jokes, throughout the nearly 30 years they've been around. But it was just, for me, it's this like childhood thing that for some reason I still can't let go of, and I've seen all 600 episodes.
Well, it's a bit like you forgive Grandma for her indiscretion.
No, I've never forgave Grandma for her crappy racism.
Well,
Forget
it's like,
that.
she's old. Don't
no,
worry. Like, old Simpsons.
I don't give a pass just because she's Grandma. I've actually been kind of mean to Grandma about it. I was like,
well, you can call it out. You don't have to be like, oh yeah, everything about Grandma or everything about The Simpsons is great. But you can be like, you know what, my grandma's really good at making pie. She's also a racist. Like,
Oh my God. Like, I guess you could say that about The Simpsons, because they, like, The Simpsons does, like, they have a lot of issues with trans misogyny and racism. Like, the character of Pooh is appalling.
Yeah.
Especially today. Like, in the early 90s, it didn't seem as bad, I guess.
That's right, in the 40s.
But, like, now it's just embarrassing. In fact, a few years ago when they were announcing they were killing off a character, like, a lot of people were hoping it was Apu because of just like how ridiculously offensive it is to have Hank Azaria doing this, like, kind of cruel imitation, and
I never thought of that. I can't believe I just never even, like, I think maybe because The Simpsons is such an institution in my life, it's just like I take it for granted. And like, oh yeah, Apu's like a white dude pretending to be a stereotypical Indian guy, doing a stereotypical Indian guy profession with his voice, and oh my goodness, with a lot of kids.
Like huge Simpsons fan. I've like watched all the episodes of commentary, and apparently, like, Apu wasn't even supposed to be Indian in the first place. The convenience store guy was supposed to be, not Indian.
Yeah.
But then apparently Hank Azaria just like did the lines in the accent, and then they just kept it. But yeah, like, it's just like, yeah, but like, it was bad back then, and like, but today it's like embarrassingly
zero
bad,
excuse for it, I suppose. What was I going to ask about in regards to cartoons? Oh, are there other, like you mentioned, other comic artists and like different things that influence you? Like, is there anything else you're really digging besides the old-timey cartoons?
Oh yeah, of course. Like, that's just like one small part of my influence. Like I said, The Simpsons was a big influence. Like, also, like, around that time, like, because I was like, I think I was like 8 years old when The Simpsons started. But yeah, around the same time, like, I was obsessed with the Ren Stimpy show.
Oh yeah.
God, it's like, people always like point that out in my drawings. They're like, wow, that looks like.
Oh
Ren
yeah,
Stimpy.
totally. I had an instructor in university who worked on Ren Stimpy.
Oh, neat. Yeah,
great.
like, oh gosh. And some of those cartoons, like, like, are some of the most beautifully television animation that you'll ever see, or probably ever will see, because, I feel like those cartoonists were really obsessed with trying to make it look, interesting as far as the animation goes.
Yeah, it was, I don't know what it was, but it seems like there was some kind of, like, you had to stand out, because I don't know, these days it's like, yeah, whatever, cartoons will watch it, I don't care. I don't know what it is that makes the art so special about back then. They tried a little more almost, I'm not sure. But I mean, there's still good stuff today.
Well, like, I love cartoons that, like, Gravity Falls is great, and I watched Star versus the Forces of Evil, and of course Steven Universe, like, if you're not watching Steven Universe, you have to start watching Steven Universe.
See, people always assume I watch it for some reason, and like, I don't watch.
Oh,
I don't watch things. I don't. All I do is work. I don't do stuff.
Oh man, I wish I had that drive. I'm such a couch potato.
But then, like, it gives you influence. Like, I feel like I don't live. All I do is work, which is great. But I don't have this fun. I don't get to see cartoons. I made myself start playing Pokemon Go in the summer because it's like, you know what? I need to be like an actual person who does things. This is a nice way to experience some pop culture. And then I quit because I wasn't getting enough work done. I
like, jeez, I am in that boat so much. But like I said, like, it's hard for me to get, going sometimes. But yeah, I wish I could be a workaholic. But instead, like, cause I don't know if you're familiar with PTSD and how like it, like when you get triggered, like it triggers like certain like flight, freeze, like etc. Reactions, and I'm like total freeze person. Like I just like you know I'll completely freeze up. I'll just like sink into like the television or the internet and just like not get anything accomplished. It's the worst.
Well, it's kind of good that you have that there, though, because what will be the alternative? Just being upset alone? At least you can have characters that kind of help you feel good about life.
Yeah, same. It's like funny because like I'm getting older now, and like like it's like fun. Like lately, like because like I'm in my 30s now, and like recently I've been revisiting like some stuff from like that I liked in my teens and 20s, and which has actually helped me like get out of the depression a little bit.
I'll bet.
But like I started like watching like old Tiny Toon Adventures cartoons. I loved that stuff as a kid, and I just figured that it didn't age well. But like some of these cartoons are hilarious. I can't like.
I'm usually pleasantly surprised. You don't get the jokes when you're a kid. When you're a little kid, you just like, oh yeah, whatever, Buster Bunny. But then you realize the things they're saying, it's like, whoa, that's a little over my head as a kid,
Well, not just that, but just like good comedy and good comedic timing, and just like and then some of the episodes had really good animation too. But yeah, I just rewatched Tiny Toon Adventures, how I spent my summer vacation, and like there's some jokes in there that are definitely dated and not not the best by today's standards, but like overall, I was cracking up most of the time.
Huh. Yeah, I remember it. I watched all that stuff as a kid, and I guess I just assumed I wouldn't like it going back to it, but
yeah, it's like so funny. Like it's like I feel like for me, it was like in my mid-20s, late 20s. I felt like I had to like grow out of a lot of certain things that I liked, and I tried to like things that are like more adult, like like in my teens and early 20s, I really loved punk rock music, and then in my mid 20s, I'm like, well, this is done, and I'm too old for this stuff, and like, but then like over the past couple of years, I'm like, wait a second, like this music is what made me happy before, and like and then actually like discovering new punk and hardcore bands is like Gloss, for instance. Everyone loves Gloss, and another group called Reviver. These great queer punk groups that are making good music.
That's so interesting, but it makes such complete sense, this connection between punk rock and queerness. Like, it's so neat how it's evolved in that direction, as it went from being kind of uptight in terms of like middle-class white boys who are very masculine in their own way, and now it's become like a total queer revolution. It's kind of neat, and it makes complete sense.
Yeah, it's kind of funny too, because like even like the straight cis boys are kind of embracing their femininity. It seems like, because like I was like just like going through the internet, and I came across like in high school, I really loved that band NoFX, and like like back then they're just like they're like these bro dudes that like it's like this total bro dude band, and like they're just like joking around all the time and like being awful. And now like the lead singer like walks around in a dress all over the place, and it's like I'm like, oh wow, that's pretty neat.
That's pretty punk rock.
I wasn't expecting that at all.
You know what? I had the similar experience of revisiting punk recently, but that was because, did you ever listen to DBS?
Was not into them.
Oh, they're from Vancouver, and they did an album with Anti-Flag. Did you listen to Anti-Flag ever?
A little bit. I like them a little bit, but I didn't get too into them.
Well, I don't know. I totally I didn't think this would happen, because I thought, oh, I don't outgrown punk rock. I am too cool, and it's for immature, teenage boys or whatever. And then I found out that my brother, he plays in a band, and their drummer is the drummer from DBS, and I was like, oh my god, you're the drummer from DBS. I love you.
That's always funny too. Like when like you meet some celebrity, or not even a celebrity, but like someone that's like, in a band that you like, or just like, it's like the same thing with like, because like I'm no celebrity, I just make a comic that some people like, or I'll meet someone, they're like, oh my god, I love your comic.
Oh yeah,
and
I was gonna say,
like,
I'm kind of stoked. I'm getting to talk to Jessica Nightmare right now. Like, I don't know. It's nice to meet people who do art that you like. It's special, and you should feel special that you get to do that for people. I'm actually.
Yeah, it does feel good, but like, oh gosh, like I said, the whole like, even just being slightly popular is kind of stressful.
Yeah.
Because like the thing is, I'm not very popular, like in the grand scheme of things.
It's a disproportionate amount of hate that we get for recognition.
Oh yeah, it's ridiculous. Like I find like, and just like the way that people, I don't, like I said earlier, like I just have such a difficult time navigating, just like even a little bit of popularity, because like, you'll find like there's people in there that, most people they see, they understand that you're a person, you have flaws, and, everyone has flaws, and, like, and you're working through things, and you're not gonna, but, and then, there's other people that I feel like they might put me on a pedestal, and that feels weird. And then the weirdest thing is, it's like, then there's like this, other group of people that I just feel like they're like out to get me. They're like looking for something to like drag me through the mud over.
Yeah.
And like, really, I just like want to be treated like anyone else.
Right.
And, which, like, honestly, most people do. Like, it's just, like, a few loud assholes that, like, have, made my life, like, not fun.
Well, you know what I've noticed, though, is they all team up. When one makes a shitty comment, they get all their friends to come and back them up. It's weird. They make little internet posses.
Yeah, like, that's, like, internet mobs coming after me is scary. Like, there's that troll website, what are they called? The Kiwi Farms.
Oh, yes,
oh my god.
I'm aware of
It's just
Kiwi
like
Farms.
A bunch of right-wing jerks that like have nothing better to do.
Well, it's a bunch of 13-year-olds.
Wait, I'm sorry?
It's a bunch of 13-year-olds. That's what it seems like when you read
Oh,
their
yeah,
comments.
absolutely. Well, it's sad. It's like, these people are in their 20s and 30s, really, like it just...
Oh, you there, hun?
Oh, yeah, I'm here.
Okay, it froze for a sec.
Oh, sorry.
No, it's
yeah. I was going to say the sad part is that they aren't teenagers; they're adults.
Well, they write at a teenage level. If that, it's sad. I don't know. It churns my stomach just kind of knowing that somebody can be so fueled by hate.
Oh yeah, and the funny thing is, because I go and check on the page every once in a while that they have dedicated to me, just because like I've heard stories about these people like stalking trans women in real life, and just like I don't know how seriously fixated someone's gonna get on me. Like if someone really wanted to find me, I'm sure they could. And so every once in a while I go and check on it to make sure they're not like all over me and like trying to find out like where I live or anything. But yeah, it's just ridiculous. Like they just spend all their time making fun of like autistic people and trans women, and they even have like a section where like you could report the dead name of a trans woman, and it's all and then they go and they're like, we're not transphobic or we're not trans misogynists, and like, but like their targets are mostly trans women. Like they have this huge, there's like hundreds of pages of just talking shit about assigned male and Sophie.
Oh my god, yeah.
And like my page, or like the thread on my comic is like under 100 pages, and that's still stressful. But
that's
oh gosh, I feel
hate.
so bad for
I don't know.
Sophie. It's just like hundreds of pages of just all this meanness.
Yeah, and really petty meanness. And like it's times where they're making fun of something, and it's like, yeah, that's not a thing to make fun of. You're just looking for stuff to make fun of now. Like they're going out of their way to be mean just because. It's weird, and I don't understand why you would do that in your life.
Yeah, it's bad, and like when it comes from right wingers like that, it's like easier to let it brush off my shoulders, like because it's just like, okay, these people want to be mean, they're looking to be mean, you know, like there's nothing much you could do about it. Like I said, it's like more heartbreaking for me, like when like other leftists are like, you know, like angry at me, like, you know, not long ago, well, I guess it was last year actually. So like a year ago, I came out with a comic, you know, like talking about like, oh, 6 things that I didn't have to deal with.
Oh yes.
Before my,
you reposted that one recently. I saw it. Yeah.
you know, and like there's this like, you know, I just like had like a group of like angry leftists at me saying that I was like erasing, you know, the misogyny that trans women face before their transition, and erasing, you know, the sexual assault that trans women might face, you know, before our transition. And, you know, like, and like, honestly, you know, like I've never said I speak for anyone but myself, and this is all my experience, you know, but like, I just like came off like they weren't really mad, you know, or even believed that I was like erasing like trans women's experiences, because like that, you know, I'm saying, you know, the word me, this is a comic about me
not
personally.
trans women in general.
Yeah, you know, I don't want to speak for anyone but myself. And like, but I felt like they were just like trying to make it seem like, you know, like I was doing something wrong, or like they just wanted me to something to drag me through the mud over.
It's kind of the modern culture online, the call out culture. People were going to kind of go out of their way to find something to get pissed off about, because you get recognition for it, you get your upvotes and your likes, and if you're a journalist, you can make money. You get a click on your article. You can just write a call out article, and there you go. It doesn't even matter if you believe in it. And so I think a lot of amateur commenters follow this model, and they start calling out people for things that's like, that's not really worth calling people out about.
Well, yeah, you know, like also recently, like someone was giving me a hard time because the name of my comic strip is Manic Pixie Nightmare Girls, and they're like, "Oh, that's not nice for people with manic depression." And I'm like, "Oh, I have manic depression. I've just yet to really get into it with the comics." And you know, like, and again, it was like this thing where I felt like, you know, just someone's like, "Oh, I'm gonna get you on something," you know.
Gotcha.
And like the thing is, like, I now, you know, like, you know, it's in, you know, when it comes to like issues of justice, you know, like it's impossible to know everything.
Yeah.
So that means you're gonna like mess up on something or other, you know, and like, you know, I always do my best, try to take responsibility if I'm like not seeing something that, or like if I'm missing something or being mean in some way, like I want to take responsibility for that, you know, and and it's hard to like, because like, you know, you never know like what people's intentions are, like when, you know, this group of people were like saying that, you know, like, you know, I was erasing, you know, pre-transition sexual assault victims, like, you know, like it, like I really, like I had to like think about that for a long time, you know, and like I was, you know, like I wanted to consider their opinion, you know, and like I racked my brain on it for, you know, a really long time, you know, before like, you know, like a friend would just told me that like, you know, listen, these people are just jerks and they want something to get you on, like, you know. And I feel like as long as you're just trying to, and like genuinely like trying to be a better person in your life, that's like pretty much all you need.
Yeah.
You know, but like, yeah, it's just like when people come at you, like assuming that you're acting in bad faith, like, you know, that's the part that I have like a problem with.
For sure. Well, kiddo, we got to wrap up here. Just to finish up, where can people, assuming they live in a cave and haven't read your comic, where should people go to find your work, and what they should do to support you? What are the best places? We'll put all that link and crap in the description, but...
Oh, nice. Yeah, well, you know, like obviously I have manicpixienightmaregirls.com. That's my website. But then also, you know, at Tumblr is the Manic Pixie Nightmare Girl. And then Facebook, you know, you just look for Manic Pixie Nightmare Girls. And like honestly, like the Facebook is where like if you want to talk to me or reach me, that's probably the best way to do it. You know, like because like that's where the comment section is, and if you want to comment on my comics or whatever, you know, go and do it there. And then, oh yeah, you please support me, for crying out loud. It's patreon.com/MPNG.
So.
And yeah, I have a Patreon page, and oh yeah, and if you support me, you get little extra goodies. Once a month, I'll have an exclusive comic for people who are pledging to my Patreon. they're not as good as the comics I put out to everyone else, but you know, it's a little
extra.
something.
I'm a little jealous of those people. Maybe I should start pledging some of my Patreon dollars to yours, just so it's worth the comic exchange.
Yeah, it's just $1, and like, you know, and it's great. I love Patreon. Like, you know, like I support a couple people who I know and admire, and yeah, it's like you know, I pay for like most of my rent with it, and it's like honestly been a lifesaver. And you know, especially like for, you know, any kind of art that you're doing, it doesn't matter what it is, set up a Patreon, and you know, like people who just want to help you out and make it through this life will help you, and it's just so amazing.
Oh yeah, it's my bread and butter as much as possible too. Well, my dear, I could talk to you forever. We're gonna cut out here and we'll say goodbye offline. Thank you for coming on, and thank you to everybody for listening. I'll see you next week with a next amazing guest. Till next time, see ya.